everyone. Welcome to Hard Talks with Dr. Gloria. I'm Dr. Gloria Thomas Anderson, your host, and I'm really excited today to have Dr. Leslie Griffin with us as our special guest. She has a Master of Science degree in Marriage and Family Therapy, and she has a doctorate degree in Family Studies from Texas Women University. I'm really excited to have Dr. Leslie with us today. She deals with married couples, helping them work through issues and have unity and all of the good things that we want in relationships. So I'm really excited to have her talk to us today about how couples can be during the pandemic and even just in their life in general.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Gloria. I appreciate it very much.
I'm glad that you're here with us. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, what led you, first of all, to wanting to do something with married couples? Marriage Champs is just very specific. Tell us a little bit more about
Yeah.
that.
Well, actually, Marriage Champs was really birthed just from personal struggles in my own marriage. Just back in 2012, my husband and I were not in a good space. And it was just really a way for me just trying to figure out how to connect with him. He is a former athlete. And so loves football. And one Sunday he was watching a football game and very excited, very animated. He was on the phone with his friends and just laughing and talking. And I remember thinking, if I could just take a little bit of that passion and dump it into our marriage, we'd be great. And I asked him, I said, hey, listen, how is it so easy for you to work on teams with other people and you get so excited about this? And it's just very different when it comes to me. He said, I don't know, it's just different. And I said, no, actually, it's not. It's just like working on a team, a football team, a work team, any kind of. He said, nah, it's not. And I said, I'm going to show you. So that kind of was the birth of Marriage Champs, the idea and the concept to use as kind of a team themed sports competitive gamified approach to strengthening marriages. And I was counseling at the time as well. And so I just started using kind of sports team analogies in my counseling sessions, and it was working well, particularly with the men and connecting with them. And it just kind of blossomed from there. So that's originally how it started.
Wow. Wow. And so Marriage Champs has been around for how many years now?
5 years now.
5 years, yeah. I was reading about it. I looked at your website and I watched your video on there, and you were sharing your story, but I wanted you to tell us what it was like to do that. You mentioned in your on your website too that there were 5 target areas that you focus in on. Can you tell us a little bit about the spiritual growth and the passion areas first?
Oh, definitely. So we came up with this conceptual framework just after just doing some research about what really successful couples have to say about marriage and how they've been able to maintain and grow a thriving marriage over time. So that framework that we have kind of came out of that research and out of the theory, a triangular theory of love, which says that you need passion, intimacy, and commitment to have kind of the love that people desire. So we've taken and added spiritual growth and teamwork just because faith is just such a huge component for us, my husband and I. And we just believe that just in God's design and blueprint for marriage, and part of the challenges that I was seeing in counseling was because people did not have a shared vision. They were not utilizing their shared values to kind of govern and guide the decisions that they were making. So spiritual growth is just really foundational. If you're going to build a house, you have to have a solid foundation. So spiritual growth is probably the primary thing we try to that is kind of incorporated in all the other areas. Passion is extremely important because it is that when you talk about passion, you're talking about the feeling when you see your mate, where you get really excited, or you can't wait to leave work to get home to them, or when they come in the house, or when you've been away for a while, you get really excited to see them, very attracted to them. You want to spend lots of time with them. So what happens over time is that starts to decrease in relationships. And then that just opens the door for all kinds of problems and challenges, especially if you are not grounded spiritually. You will be tempted and distracted by things, by not getting your needs met. And so really trying to help couples focus on passion. If the passion has gone, if you will,
Mhm.
then we try to reinfuse that or reestablish that passion that they once had for each other.
What are some of the things that you do to help them kind of rekindle that
Mhm.
passion?
So one of the things that we try to do is we try to, it sounds kind of probably a little cliche,
Uh-huh.
but we try to have couples really go back. So reminiscing is one of the skills that we kind of teach. A lot of the things that we talk about, the areas that we focus on, there are
Mhm.
skills that can be learned underneath those areas.
Right.
So when it comes to passion, reminiscing is a skill that you need to develop because it sounds very simple, but just even going back and thinking about where we started and when I first met you, what I thought when I saw you, or
Mhm.
what was our first date like, or our first kiss, or what, having people to recall when things were really passionate, when they really were excited about each other. That's a start. And then we teach other skills like complimenting or flirting or just simple little things that people forget to do over time.
Do you think that happens because you get comfortable with each other and then you just sort of kind of take it for granted that, well, or that you get bored? I've heard,
Yeah.
couples say that they get bored with each other too.
All of those things are factors that will cause your level of passion to decrease over time. Complimenting a woman, maybe you stop doing that or stop flirting with your woman, your wife, and you need to start doing that again. You need to practice that. And sometimes women and men don't know how to accept compliments.
Right. And the other one was intimacy, teamwork, and then you mentioned the commitment
Mhm.
too. But the intimacy sounds like it would be part of the passion too.
They're slightly different. When it comes to intimacy, you're talking about something much more deeper, much deeper. So intimacy can be physical intimacy, but also just emotional connectedness. Someone being able to share intimate things, to be vulnerable, to express emotion. You have to have a safe environment to be able to do that, particularly for men, because men are socialized differently than women. It's
Right.
okay for women to share their emotions. We can express all kinds of emotions. We can be happy, we can be sad, we can be angry, we can be frustrated, we can be men, they can only really express, two. They can't say, oh, that really hurt my feelings or that made me sad or, that was really traumatizing or that hurt me. They can't really do that like we can. So,
Yeah, and it's because, our social conditioning causes us to do that, to think
absolutely.
that are to be this way and women are to be this way. How do we get past those roles that society has imposed on us in our marriage?
I think it's just education, lots of education. And I think it takes people speaking out and saying it is okay for men to cry. It is okay for men to express emotion. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you, in fact, it's the opposite. But it takes just another man being vulnerable enough to say, hey, man, uh, I cried, when my spouse did this, or when my children were born, I just cried like a baby. Or,
Mhm.
it's just
Yeah,
little things like that.
yeah,
But it's important to create an environment where it is safe to do that.
yes. And being safe also means too that you won't be attacked or judged
That's
because
what people fear.
yes, they do. And so sometimes the women, as well as men, they'll go to their friends or someone like you were talking about your husband in the beginning. He would
Mhm,
be on the phone with his
mhm,
friends talking about, and they had something in common. And the same thing happens with, women too. We'll go
mhm.
shopping or we'll, get on the phone and talk with our friends when sometimes I think men and women both need to really just realize that it's important to be real
Mhm.
in your relationship in order for you to have that comfort level. You have to feel like you can be who you are, you
Absolutely.
know.
Absolutely. And when people start to share, whether they are the male or the female, they have to know that they can trust you with that information. When someone's sharing their heart,
Mhm.
they have to know that you are going to safeguard it. And
Yeah.
so, what happens a lot of times in relationships is that someone will share something and then the other person will use it against them later when they get mad or bring it back up. And
Mhm.
that's a surefire way. to shut somebody down. They will not talk to you ever again. It creates a distance because
Yeah.
I shared something with you in confidence because I thought this was a safe space. I thought you were a soft landing place. But now that I know you're going to use it against me, why would I share anything intimate with you again?
Say, for example, a couple that has happened,
Mhm.
that person, one of the people, whether it's the man or the woman, felt safe enough to share. And
Mhm.
then that other person took that information and went and say, talked to family members about
Right.
it. Then it got all out. And
Mhm.
so now there's this distance between them. How can people get back to that place of, like, the place of forgiveness in
Mhm.
something like that?
Yeah, so there are a couple of different things. There's no one right answer for that, but
Yeah.
part of it is you have to demonstrate, or I was going to say prove yourself. I don't really like that word, but
Yeah.
you have to demonstrate your trustworthiness over time now.
Hmm.
It's kind of like you start off with really good credit and then you mess your credit up and now you have to rebuild your credit.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Good
so now
analogy.
you're in a position where, I don't really trust you very much, are you going to pay this bill because you jacked up your credit before? So why would I give you a loan? It's the same kind of thing
Yeah.
in relationships. When you have damaged the trust, when you have done something that communicates to me that you're not trustworthy, you're not safe. Now
Mhm.
you have to demonstrate that you are. The number one thing is acknowledging and taking responsibility for what you have done. And people have to learn to apologize. And it's more than just saying I'm sorry. I'm sorry is not enough.
Yes.
You have to say I'm sorry for, which means you're taking responsibility.
Mhm.
And you need to say, I recognize that it made you feel this way. And
Mhm.
then you say what you're going to do differently.
Yeah.
And then you ask them, how can I make it right?
Mhm.
It's sorry is not enough.
It's easy to say you're sorry, but you're absolutely right. There has to be something demonstrated after that to show that remorse, and
Right.
that, and not to expect it to be all of a sudden too. It takes time to repair, just like you would repair your credit.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And the teamwork, you kind of alluded to that, but the teamwork, tell us a little bit about that concept in the marriage, how that works.
So that's kind of the fun part to me, where you are working together to really accomplish something. You'd be surprised the number of couples who are together and they have no plans, no goals, no anything.
Mhm.
It's like, what are you working towards? Why are you together? To look back and see what you built with a person is one of the most amazing things, in the world. And if couples are not used to working together, we kind of start them off small just with regard to teamwork. What is one thing that you guys can work together to accomplish? Maybe it is, hey, we want to save $5,000 for a down payment on a car or house. Okay, how are you going to accomplish that? And then we try to, do fun things with couples or have them go out. And we used to host events where we would have couples come and we would go. I would do a skills building 90-minute session kind of as a group. And then we would go bowling, and we would have husbands against wives or couples against couples, just kind of that whole idea of working together and cheering each other on, being able to say, come on, you can do it. And
Yeah.
or if I need help, if I say, hey, I need an assist, that means you need to be willing to assist me. So if my job is to cook the meal, but I'm tired when I get home and I say, can you cook, please? That's me asking for an assist. I need help. I'm tired.
Right.
So ideally, my husband would say, no problem. I got it.
Yeah.
That's the helping and the teamwork where maybe you were supposed to give the kids a bath, but you're running late at work. So, hey, I see that that's something that you would do, but I already did it for you. Being able to accomplish things together, we just accomplish more when we work together.
Yes. Well, with COVID and the pandemic, everybody's dealing with that. What would you recommend, or what would you say to couples who are struggling in all of those areas, whether it's the spiritual growth area, the lack of passion, the commitment is maybe still there, they're still wanting to be together, but the teamwork is not there, and perhaps the intimacy is not
Yeah.
there, especially with COVID. What kinds of things would you suggest people do to deal with this reality?
I think one of the things that would be helpful, and this is going to sound like a shameless plug, but it's really not, is couples, you need to assess where you are. So, like, if you go to the Marriage Champs website, you'll see this. We call it a high five assessment. It's 50 statements. You kind of rank them. So you take these, there are these statements, and it'll tell you where you scored the lowest, whether it's spiritual growth, passion, intimacy, teamwork, or commitment. Wherever you score the lowest, that's probably the area you need to focus. So part of the challenge for couples when they're in a crisis is they don't know where to focus. They don't know how to fix it. I don't even know what's wrong. All I know, most of the time they say, well, we just don't communicate well, or we fight too much.
Right.
Instead of really getting at the core issue of what it is. We try to help people, try to help couples hone in on where it is that they're struggling. And then you just need to build that area. Because I'm sure, like you said, even if they're having trouble in 4 other areas, maybe their commitment is good. They realize, nope, we need to figure it out. We don't know how, but we need to figure it out. And I'm determined to stay here until we do. Really figuring out where they need to focus is number one. And then number 2 is making up in their mind that they are going to grow. It's a decision. You can have the kind of marriage that you want to have. You want a thriving, happy, healthy marriage, you can have it. You just have to make up in your mind that this is what you want, and then you have to do the work that is required to get there.
And it does take 2. It's not just one person, right? I know.
Well, I'm kind of that one's I'm kind of on the fence with that. Because I've been in a situation where my spouse was kind of over it. He just was like, I don't want to be married anymore. And I was determined that, you know what, I'm going to see this through. I made a vow, and while he was just in a place of, he just was depleted, just had it, he was just over it. For me, I tell couples all the time, it just takes one person and the Lord. It just takes one committed person. And usually that's the person who's probably the most spiritually mature.
Yes.
Because when you are in a battle
Yes.
and you're fighting for your marriage, and it seems like you're fighting alone because your mate doesn't want the marriage anymore. If you are grounded and you hang in there, you're going to take some blows, but you'll come out on the other side. It happened for me. So I'm a living witness that it just takes one.
Yeah, it does take one. I can see your point on that,
Yeah.
especially when it's one plus God.
Absolutely.
He was the majority.
Absolutely.
And the power of God working through a marriage. I've seen that happen too with couples where, the things were not good. And then one praying woman just staying before the Lord and confessing and speaking, oh, our marriage is going to work, and speaking that love and loving through that process too. Loving the husband in spite of, just showing that love toward him. And oftentimes things can turn around. You'll see
turn around.
you'll see it turn around. Yeah, it's not fighting back with fire.
Seems very rejecting in the moment, because they're like, I don't want this anymore. And you're like, oh dear God, like what? But for me, it was very humbling, because I had made mistakes just in terms of my attitude. Just now, I was very immature early on in my marriage. I got married when I was 23. So I was young and I didn't know a lot. And so I made a lot of mistakes just in terms of how I handled him as a man. I knew that. I recognized that. And I had grown spiritually. And I saw the error of my ways. And so I used to pray for God to give me another opportunity to demonstrate to him that I was different, And so that was my process. So it really was me just growing and becoming better myself. Yeah. And I just trusted that the Lord was going to allow me an opportunity for my husband to view me in a different light. And he did.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. But you can't be half. You got to make the decision, and you got to be all in. You can't waver. The couples that I work with, sometimes I work with just wives individually who are standing for their marriage because their husbands have checked out. And because I've gone through it, the Bible teaches us to comfort those the same way that I have been comforted, so I went through something so that I can help somebody else. And so I tell them in the beginning, you got to make a decision right now, today. I made a decision that I was going to see it through, that I was going to hang in there no matter what it took. I was going to do it.
Do you have any tips about for single people? say single tips for singleness, people who might be lonely in
Mhm,
during the pandemic,
mhm.
wanting companionship, not married.
That can be a hard thing. I definitely understand that. So, loneliness is one of those things that it's an emotion that I think it's on some level we all experience. Even if you're married, there are plenty of people that are lonely and are married, just because there's a disconnect emotionally. So, I think for singles, depending upon where you are, whether or not you're lonely just temporarily because we're in a pandemic and you can't go out with your friends or meet people and that sort of a thing. So
Mhm.
you're kind of like feeling away because of that versus I'm lonely and I want to mate. I think those are two kind of different
Yes,
animals.
yes.
So, for the single person who's like, I just wish I could go out and hang out with people, friends, this too shall pass. I don't know how long this pandemic is
Mhm.
going to keep us from gathering, but it's not going to be forever.
Yeah.
So, you got to hang in there until we're on the other side of this. But for singles that want to be in a relationship or desire companionship, and actually, this will probably go for both singles,
Mhm.
is really self reflecting. This is a perfect time
Mhm.
for self development and self reflection, thinking about what's going to happen in the next 3 months, 6 months. What goals am I going to accomplish? What did I need to kind of rethink because of the pandemic? What do I need to rethink after the pandemic? Um, if you don't like who you are or what you see in the mirror, change it.
Mhm.
Create a plan to change those things. Prepare yourself for a mate. One of the best things that you can do in preparation for a mate is to make sure that you are healthy and whole. And if you're concerned about that, see somebody. There's so many people who can help you along your journey. That's what we're supposed to do.
Right.
We are to help one another grow and to be better. So there are people out there who can help you to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Leslie. This has been great information, and I appreciate you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
God bless you. And thank you all for joining us today. I hope that something was said that inspired your heart, encouraged your soul with your relationships, with your family, with those that mean a lot to you during this pandemic. God bless you and have a great rest of the week. Bye bye.